Very warm welcome to you. It's Dean from maverickstar. Good afternoon. Wanted to talk about critical temperatures and the critical point. Why is all this important? Well, we are, as you can see at the right hand side of this chart, at the end of a glacial period, and probably, well into the beginnings of the new glacial period. For those of you that's between interglacial and glacial periods, well, it just in layman terms changes the entire look of the northern and southern hemispheres on our planet, in that it makes it go back into a consistent glacial period. I know it would be easy for me to say ice age, but technically I'd be wrong if I said ice age, because we are currently already in an ice age. We haven't left the last ice age, but glacial and interglacial periods are much worse in terms of effects on human beings. Before I get into this chart, there really is a need to just thank three people. So big thanks to Casey, Judy and Timo. No one took us up on our offer of becoming superstar contributors to the maverickstar Observatory, where we was going to put your name on the main page. It doesn't really matter about that. I said that if we're going to try and take on these big organisations around the world, and governments as well, in trying to force them to have this debate to clear up something huge, we can't do it with no money. You have to realise that even the smallest of these organisations gets handouts from the United Nations, the European Union and individual governments around the world to the tune of millions, if not hundreds of millions. You have to realise that, in order to get ahead of this game, it's going to require some form of assistance. And it looks, sadly at this point, and I don't like being pessimistic, but it looks like we're always going to be kicking around in the dust with very low budgets, always trying to make the most out of it. So what do we do at this point? I suppose we just carry on, because I'm not, for one, the type of person that gives up when the times get hard. But people really do need to realise where we are right now and what we're up against. You might have thought it a little strange yesterday that, after a good few hours, the video was struggling to get above 700 views. And then all of a sudden, a little later on, we had merged at over 2,000 views. And, I need to tell you these guys that we had just 3 people chipping just a small amount of money to the observatory in order to fund what we do. So getting back to critical temperatures, and just so that you understand glacial periods, because that's what's on the cards next for humanity. In simple terms, your governments aren't going to share this information with you, because you'll do exactly what previous generations have done when they have been faced with climatic changes, and nothing like on the scale on which we are going to face. Small climatic changes have brought the end to major empires. Think about that. What we're facing is a major climatic event. It's not caused by CO2. This is just something that the criminals in governments, in the European Union, in the United Nations uses as a method to funnel your taxpayers' money into their back pockets. It's a complete and utter lie. It's a fabrication of the truth, and it's disgusting. And it's open business for them, because they're not being challenged by one single iota, and they have control of the mainstream media, which is what 90% of our species follows for some angle on the truth. They believe that the governments have their best interests at hand. They've never been failed these people that believe in the government. They've not failed and experienced the total letdown at a crisis point in time of how, you know, these governments will not come to their assistance. And therefore, until that happens, until they experience severe hardships, nothing's ever going to change. The critical part of what we're seeing here on this chart before you is the temperature chart. You can see that when we go above 0 degrees, and I'm going to talk about this for a little while so that you understand what you're looking at. When we go above 0 degrees, we go into interglacial periods. These periods, as you can see, only last a very short point of the time excuse me, in each interglacial and glacial cycle, and there is 4, and we're in the 5th one of these on this chart. It goes back 450,000 years. You can see 5 interglacials at that point in time, and you can see also that we're returning back into another one. So the critical point is 0 degrees, isn't it? So what is the temperature fluctuation between, you know, an interglacial and a full-on worst case point in that cycle? Well, you can see that it goes down to -8 degrees. So the critical temperature range is from 8 degrees to 2+ degrees. So -8 degrees to +2 degrees, and that's a temperature change or fluctuation of 10 degrees, isn't it? I'm not going to get too technical here. I just want you to understand the key component here. Now, if you're living in somewhere like Afghanistan and there's a fluctuation of 10 degrees, which there is regularly throughout the seasons, there is a fluctuation of that, then, you know, you're probably least likely to notice the critical changes to the biodiversification across many ranges of plant species, how they respond to that. Just to give you an idea, most plant species will be affected with a fluctuation on a long-term scale of 2 degrees. But the critical point of this chart is something that's not being talked about. And I think that this is the reason why I've done this video today. We need to just understand something we already know. That at 0 degrees, liquid water turns to a solid and becomes ice. I want to just say that again so that it sinks in. Liquid water at 0 degrees Celsius turns from a liquid to a solid and becomes ice. And this is what they won't talk about, because this is the difference between, you know, having good cropping land in the northern and southern hemispheres to not having good cropping land. And a fluctuation of 10 degrees massively affects the diversity of crops that we grow in these regions where they are severely going to be affected in the not too distant future. And one of the way in which these organisations excuse me, are getting around this is by not actually stating the exact temperature. And even if they did, it wouldn't make any difference, because you've got to look into where they're digging up these temperatures from, these temperature stations, because it's been reported massively that they're in the wrong places. You know, scientifically, they have to be put in specific areas where they're not influenced by human behaviour. I'm talking about, you don't want, you know, a temperature monitoring station in the close proximity to air conditioning units, because the heat from those units will, you know, be reflected on the readings of the temperature at the station point. And this is why they are putting them there deliberately, so they get deliberate high readings to support global warming being caused by CO2. But I thought it was well worth just bringing this one specific point over to you guys so that you can understand that the difference between a glacial and interglacial period is just the fact that we drop 2 degrees and we go below zero, to the point where things noticeably change. We all know what happens at 0 degrees. We've all got fridge freezers in our homes. We know that most of those fridge freezers, go down to -4 to -8, maybe a little bit higher, -14 maybe, if you've got a real good freezer. But we know the critical point is 0 degrees, just like our Earth knows that. At 0 degrees, that big change takes place. Liquid becomes solid. Water becomes ice. And then you cannot grow crops in ice. And it just depends on how far north you are, as opposed to how far down in the earth the permafrost goes. Now this is the permafrost. If you didn't know, and I'm sure most of you do, hopefully know what a permafrost is. It's the level of which the surface temperature has penetrated the earth. It could be 12 inches to a metre or more, depending on where you are in this northern and southern hemisphere. If you're talking 12 inches of permafrost, you ain't growing crops in that. And just think about it. You might be in a position in the northern hemisphere where during the summer months you're at 15 degrees, and then when you drop that by 10 degrees, as we can see on this chart, you are then at 5 degrees, which really will put a big demand on the crops that you hope to get out of the ground. Now what we're seeing is reports of a lot of farmers that are noticing this, and they're going to other crops, but they're just chasing the carrot down the road, because inevitably the temperatures are going to continue to decline, and when they decline, it means that you will run out of options to choose crops so that you can provide some income for your agricultural business. And when your business goes offline and other businesses go offline, it will inevitably put a stranglehold on the food production around the world. And this is already happening, guys. This isn't new. If you're thinking, well, when does this happen, Gene? It's already been happening and been really picking up momentum over the last 15 to 20 years. Just like the decaying magnetosphere has been allowing changes to take place in our upper atmosphere, where the upper atmosphere thins as a result of solar erosion stripping away the upper atmosphere. And that's why Brazilians this week were saying that they'd noticed how hot it was when they was outside during this week. Well, it's going to first of all be noticeably hotter, but second of all, you ain't going to need to be out in that sunlight before you reach critical exposure to the sun and your skin burns. It's probably going to take place 6 to 7 times faster than what you probably would have expected it to do 5-10 years ago. And that is because we are subjected to 20 to 25% more solar erosion on our upper atmosphere, and therefore we get 20 to 25% more inbound solar radiation at surface level. But the critical temperature range is made even worse when we see that 0 degrees line in whatever part of the world we're at, because that's the shut-off point from water being liquid and becoming frozen. But there is another critical temperature range here of 10 degrees, and that is what is commonly present throughout the changes between a glacial and interglacial period. Now, some people ask, where can we get some references to these charts? I just want to say this, that what we're looking at here is not just the temperature range over 450,000 years with, the CO2 data placed on it, but we're looking at the Milankovitch cycle. And this is, if you're looking for data on the Milankovitch cycles, which is what we're looking at here, that's what you need to search on Google so that you can find more material on it. It is not nothing new. NASA are fully aware of the Milankovitch cycle and have accepted it. And, you have to, and that does raise questions, doesn't it? If they know about it, why aren't they talking about it? And why aren't they talking about the specific reality of where we are in the cycle? It's because they want to promote global warming caused by CO2. And this is why I said, if we want to address some of these issues, we've got to take it to the source of the problem. And the source of the problem right now is the lies and corruption associated with CO2. I don't care, guys, how much of my free time I have to sacrifice in order to keep plugging away at this, because I think it's a valid cause. What is at stake here is humanity. Don't take that for granted, like a lot of people are even doing so with the knowledge of what we're sharing here. They still take it for granted. They think because when they open the fridge, the eggs are there in the morning and the bacon's there, and therefore, it's honky-dory, business as usual. If you are one of these people and you're waiting for that day when you open the fridge before you act, know this: it is already too late. If those eggs and the bacon aren't in the fridge at that point in time, it's way too late. You've already lost the chair to sit on if we're in that game of musical chairs. The seat was taken a long time ago. It was just the fact that you took so long to walk over to it before someone beat you to it. This is what I want you to understand. Every time humanity has gone through a climate crisis, and we are heading into one for 3 reasons: grand solar minimum, magnetic pole reversal, the return to a glacial period. Every time one of our historical major empires have gone through climatic changes, it has brought about the end of that empire. And this one that we're in right now will be no too different to those. We have no power over nature whatsoever, but we can, for our own family's benefits, prepare a small few things which will buffer that impact, which might be the difference between a total wipeout for you and your family to a sustained slow change and adapt to the new environment when that comes. And that is what we're all facing, and some people have had to already live with those consequences. So that is why it's important for us to inform people. Information is more powerful than anything else in this world. If you're well informed, you're well ahead of the game. But don't be one of those people that are well informed that don't act, because there was no point in the first place of being informed if you're not prepared to act on the information. To be a logical, intelligent human being, you have to act where logic requires. I know that is super difficult for a lot of people, but it is necessary. Guys, it's Sunday afternoon. I'm hoping, you are not at the critical point yet. And, I want you to continue, and your family to continue not being at that point for as long as possible. But I will say this. We know that we are heading towards a cliff, and at some point we've got to jump. What I want you to do, and your family to do, is put that parachute on, so it's not a hard landing for you. I don't know what to say at this point. 3 people out of thousands is a poor show. There are people out there, I know that are capable of supporting what we do. We have to be everything not like these corrupt politicians. And that, places like the maverickstar Observatory are becoming, distant lights in the vastness of darkness. That light needs to shine a lot more brighter than what it is, and we can all individually do our own little bit. And I'll mention there the link in the description where you can, if you're not prepared or not in a situation to do something yourself, for God's sakes, help somebody that is. We have got your back here at this observatory. We are informing you of the real truth of the facts you need to have at hand. Link down there in the description, guys. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. As always, bye for now.